computer. Okay, so good morning, everybody, and welcome to another year of Jews and the News, in which I share Jewish perspectives about topics that are in the news or topics like I'm going to share with you today that happened in the course of my being a rabbi. I know the high holidays are approaching, and often I use this vehicle to kind of talk about the high holidays too, and maybe we'll do that next Monday, the day after Rosh Hashanah, to talk about the high holiday season and Yom Kippur. So we'll probably do that next week, and certainly I could have talked about could be talking today about 9/11, the 22nd anniversary of that. Um, but I have talked about it before, which does in no way do I want to imply that I'm diminishing the importance of 9/11. We certainly have to remember that, and certainly remember our own Darren Pontel, may he rest in peace, who was serving the Navy in uniform in the Pentagon that day and was killed that day. 6 months almost to the day since he was married, and I officiated at his wedding at Shaarei Tefillah. So can't help but remember Darren Pontel today. But I thought that this would be interesting to share with you. So 2 weeks ago, I get an email from the theater director of Our Lady of Good Counsel High School, which, if you don't know, is a Catholic parochial school here in Olney. I remember when it was in Wheaton and when it moved to Olney. It's a beautiful campus. It's a beautiful high school building. So the theater director, Camille Pozderak, I think is her last name. Maybe it's Pozderach. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. She goes by Emily, and so that's how she introduced herself in the email. She reached out to me because she had decided that the fall theater production at Good Counsel will be The Diary of Anne Frank. And she wanted to reach out to me to see if I could come to a rehearsal or like a pre-rehearsal meeting with the high school kids who are going to be in the cast to give the Jewish perspective to Diary of Anne Frank. So I thought, first of all, I thought that was very sensitive on Emily's part to reach out to me. That the theater director would think that it would be appropriate to provide some kind of Jewish context for this Diary of Anne Frank that's going to be put on at the Good Counsel High School in November. So, and then I thought, wow, who am I? Just a synagogue rabbi from a synagogue down the street from Good Counsel to make this presentation. Maybe she should reach out to the ADL or the Jewish Community Relations Council for resources that could be more effective than what I could share. But Emily said that I certainly will reach out to those two organizations, but thought it would just be good to have a local rabbi come and meet with the students. So I did last week, last Wednesday afternoon, and met in like the rehearsal room, and there are 20 students there, 10th grade, mostly seniors. And it was really quite remarkable. First of all, these are well-behaved, really good students. Okay, so that was nice to see. Teenagers who are well-behaved and respectful. They wear uniforms or at least a dress code, blue tops, khaki pants or skirts. So I was always in favor of uniforms for kids. Would have much preferred that if my kids had a uniform going to Jewish day school, but that's besides the point. Anyway, they were well behaved. And um, how do I provide Jewish context of the Diary of Anne Frank in 1 hour? Right? It's the history of anti-Semitism as conveyed through the play based on the book, the Anne Frank's diary. How do you condense 2,000 years of anti-Semitism into an hour presentation with questions and answers? So what I did was I started by pointing out the kippah that I'm wearing on my head. And so, I had no compunction about walking into good counsel wearing a kippah. Certainly sets me apart, lets people know who I am. And people were very nice in the office. One of the kids in the production met me in the office and took me up to the rehearsal room. So I figured I'd start with talking about the kippah and what a kippah is, and how the Jews of Holland in the 1930s had different kinds of ideas about public display of Jewish identity. And that, it's like the play Leopoldstadt, if you had a chance to see that when it was on Broadway this past year, or the play Parade, the musical Parade about the lynching of Leo Frank in Atlanta. It's all about how the Jew finds his place in the world. And that, so the Jews of Europe always felt deepest the anti-Semitism because most of the Jews of the world for the past 2,000 years lived in Europe. And as we know, the Jews wandered from empire to empire, country to country in Europe. Wherever they were provided a safe haven, they took advantage until it wasn't safe anymore. And then they had to find a new place. So that's essentially what Jewish history in Europe was for the past 2,000 years, wandering from country to country, empire to empire, until their welcome was worn out. Not because it was the Jews' fault, obviously, but because whoever was in charge said, we don't need the Jews anymore. And also, which I didn't really get into with the high school students, it's really through the fault of the Catholic Church that a lot of that moving around happened. I didn't get into that with them. I didn't want to. I didn't want to threaten my welcome at Good Counsel High School by saying, you know what the Catholic Church did to my people. I didn't want to go that far, but I did want to say how precarious the life of the Jew was in Europe. And until modern times, the Jew was forced, of course, to live in a ghetto or some place where Jews were forced to live, and other places where they were not allowed to live, and of course, certain jobs they were allowed to have, etc. So it wasn't until modern times that the Jew was given an option about how to live. It's only before modern times a Jew was forced to live as a Jew, and as a Jew in the ghetto, meaning you had to live a Jewish life because you had no other choice. You went to synagogue because all other Jews knew your business, because it's a small, tight, crowded Jewish world. So your only world is your Jewish world. Your only source of education and inspiration and socialization is with other Jews, and that meant going to synagogue. So Jews were with other Jews, forced to be Jewish only one way. Um, and so it's only in modern times, after the French Revolution, that Jews were allowed to live everywhere and to become citizens of the country in which they're living. With that, then Jews responded appropriately. Some Jews stayed in a ghetto, safer to stay there with their own kind. That's what they were used to. Continue that. Others took advantage and assimilated completely into the country in which they were living. And then, of course, though, even though they are granted citizenship and freedom, anti Semitism was still rampant. So even though they were granted full citizenship, well, okay, there were quotas, of course, as we know. And as the play Leopoldstadt points out, through 5 different members of the same family who are Jewish in different ways, one who converted to Catholicism and is still gathered in the home for Hanukkah with the rest of the family, converted but understands not really fully accepted within the Catholic Church of Austria. Others who assimilate and understand that there's only so far they're going to be able to go within the business world in Austria, and others who are thinking, let's go to Israel and follow the words of Theodor Herzl, a fellow Viennese Jew for this family in Leopoldstadt. Let's go to Israel because that's the only place to be free and to hope to be free as a Jew. So, how do you live as a Jew? And that's what the family of Anne Frank is all about. The fact that they were forced to go into hiding, forced to wear a yellow Jewish star, went against most of the Jews' feeling in Holland about not wanting to publicly identify as Jewish, rather wanting to fit in and be part of Dutch society. Okay, so that's what I talked about with the students. They asked some interesting questions. They went around the room actually introducing themselves, their name, and what part they're playing in the play. And so, all of them are Catholic students at Good Counsel, but it's interesting, 2 of them have a Jewish background, either a Jewish grandparent or a Jewish father, 2 of them. But mothers Catholic, so being raised Catholic, going to Good Counsel High School. So a couple of them are playing Nazis in the play, a couple playing Anne Frank's family, and then the family that's hiding them. So I asked them how many of them, I don't know, Catholic students, what kind of encounter they've had with Jewish people. Almost all of them, when I asked them, how many of you know Jewish people, all of them raised their hand. Almost all of them raised their hand and said, yeah, they know Jewish people, they live in Jewish neighborhoods. So, I didn't know. I said to them, I was raised in a Jewish bubble. I went to the equivalent of this for the Jewish community, a Jewish day school, all my life. Became a rabbi, so I just live in a Jewish bubble. So I'm just not. I just wanted to know about that. They said, how are we supposed to respond to maybe some students or the school community saying, what are we doing putting on this Jewish play? Why should we care? We Catholic students care about putting on a Jewish play. So I thought that was an interesting question. I said, Fiddler on the Roof is one of these plays that has been performed around the world. And so when it's performed around the world, most of the time, Jews are not the actors in Fiddler on the Roof. There's something about the theme of Fiddler on the Roof that kind of is a universal theme. Hatred, running away from racism and bigotry, how to deal with your own ethnic identity and maintain that ethnic identity in the modern world, right? So these are themes that are universal They are global in nature. So, do you need Jewish people to play the parts of Fiddler on the Roof? Well, as a Jew, it would be kind of funny to see non-Jewish people in those roles, especially pronouncing the Yiddish words in the play, and singing, Shabbat prayer while you're lighting the Shabbat candles and knowing no idea what you're doing. But it's the idea. And again, the same. Maybe a little bit different for the Diary of Anne Frank. That's a Jewish story and represents the culmination of hatred uh, and persecution of the Jew during the time of the Holocaust. So I would imagine there could be some Jews who would argue only Jewish people should play this, but it should be played to a whole variety of audiences. But on the other hand, I could understand how powerful it would be for non-Jews to take the play seriously, understand the context of the play, understand what's happening, what was happening in the world in the 1930s, 40s in Holland, and in Europe, and to then fully empathize and sympathize with the story so that it transforms you as an actor as you're putting on the play. And I also said to them that, there's a universal idea, the biblical idea, love your neighbor as you would be loved. How do you translate big ethical concepts like hatred, racism, love? How do you translate that? That's what the vehicle of a play is, to kind of take an aspect of this huge abstract concept and create a story from it that provides a take on that big idea, right? Um, so that's what I said was, I think the powerful reason why good counsel should be putting on the play, and good counsel should be applauded for doing so. I must say that in the history of the Interfaith Clergy Association here in Olney, it was only for the first couple of years of it that one of the priests of St. Peter's Catholic Church, that's the one on Route 108, kind of, if you're going up Georgia, make a right on 108 after the shopping centers. Then the next block after that, after Spartan Road, is the Catholic Church. So it's only for a couple of years that one of the priests of that Catholic Church participated in the Interfaith Clergy Association. Since then, there hasn't been. So I don't know if that reflects a wariness on the part of Catholic Church in general about interfaith activities, or just the interest or lack thereof by the current priests of St. Peter's. But so if whatever the reason, the lack of participation in interfaith activities makes putting on the Diary of Anne Frank that much more important for Good Counsel High School to be doing. So the theater director said something about they're planning, the play is going to be put on between November 3rd and November 11th. Yeah, at which I was just thinking now, during that time, it would be the anniversary of Kristallnacht. So quite appropriate. I didn't think of that when she said when they're putting it on. I didn't tell the kids that that's during Kristallnacht. But she said that maybe they would have me or be part of a panel after one of the performances during the week to kind of talk about these things again to the theater going public during that time. So I was really taken by these students and the theater director. I really, really appreciated the invitation, and it gives me hope that one person at a time, one class at a time, um, hatred can um, can be transformed into love and justice. So that's essentially what I wanted to say. Any thoughts or comments about this?
Just a question, will
Yeah.
that be, especially when you're on the panel, would that be open to people outside the school?
I would imagine so, but so I don't know. I haven't
Uh-huh.
followed up with the theater
Yeah, you
director
wouldn't know.
after I met
Uh-huh.
with her last week, but I guess as it gets closer, I don't know how. I've never seen advertisement for plays at Good Counsel High School before. But then again, I don't pay attention to the throwaway Olney news that I get in my mailbox every week. And I'm sure there is a calendar of events in there, and maybe the play is advertised in there. But I haven't heard about it more broadly in that way. But I would imagine that tickets would be available to, I'm sure it's a huge theater, so that there would be room to open it to the public. But I don't know, and I'm probably not going to have the time to follow up until
Yeah, yeah.
after Yom Kippur. So, um, yeah. But it would be nice to open it up to the community. Any other thoughts or comments about this? About any thoughts about Catholic kids playing the role of Anne Frank and putting on the play?
Sounds great to me. I mean, especially they seem so open
Yes.
and will make use of that opportunity
Yeah.
for it to be a transformational experience for
Right.
them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I was really taken with that. It's one thing for professional actors to kind of learn about the person that they're playing and learn about their background. It's another for high school kids to do that too, on top of all the other classes that they're taking. So the fact that they're taking it seriously and encouraged to do so by the director is really good. So. Um, okay, so that's what I want to share today. It's a little bit shorter session than we usually have, but we'll spend more time next week in talking about the high holidays and the 10 days of repentance and Yom Kippur. Not exactly a news kind of item, but it is what's happening in the calendar appropriate to talk about and respond to. Have a good rest of the day, everybody, and a happy and a healthy new year.
Okay. Thank you. You too.